first of all, I'm the first labor guy you all have ever had. Yeah, I'm the Teamsters Union. My boss is Jim Hoffa Jr., and that's right. And I'm the first labor guy. I'm really proud, really excited and proud to be the first union dude that you've ever had at an RCAF convention. That'll always be a first. So I'm pleased to be that guy. And it's true. And let me just say one other thing. I woke up in Washington, D.C. this morning, came out to, visit with y'all. And I didn't come out here all the way to tell you something that you already know. But I need you to know that Bill Bullard and RCAF are an institution in Washington, D.C. He opens doors and he gets attention, and he's always working in coalitions, and I'm going to be talking about some coalitions here in a minute. The Coalition for Prosperous America that he just mentioned, the Citizens Trade Campaign that I was working with when I first met Bill back in the early 2000s, shortly after the battle in Seattle that I helped coordinate. It took a little while to get all the tear gas off my clothes, smell the tear gas, but that's when I met Bill. And let me just tell you something. In Washington, D.C., and in the fair trade coalitions that I run in, RCAF and Bill Bullard is really, you guys are getting your money's worth with that man, and it is a great pleasure always to work with Bill and to always work with RCAF. Yeah, as he said, in those days, I wasn't actually a labor guy. There are plenty of labor. My brothers and sisters, 50,000 of my closest friends in the streets of Seattle in '99, and a lot of them were labor union folks. In those days, I was actually even worse, man. I was a Nader guy. Yeah, I was a Ralph Nader guy. That was the Global Trade Watch Public Citizen, and that's who I was actually working for, and the de facto field director of the Citizens Trade Campaign. This was, when I first started doing this work in the mid-'90s, NAFTA had passed, and the WTO was a new situation that we were all dealing with, that the GATT had become the World Trade Organization. And my job was really to bring together the several strands of the anti-corporate fair trade movement across different constituencies, crossing a wide ideological and partisan spectrum. So, I'm just picking up just a segue from the last talker, right? From the last, Carson, right? What you had to say on the political stuff. That was a really good talk, and the politics of this, talking around the populist issues as we take on the free trade lobby is the thing that I want to talk about with you today as well, right? But there's populists of the left and there's populists of the right. I used to run with this cat, Jim Hightower. He used to be the agriculture commissioner in Texas. Always wore a cowboy hat too, Jim Hightower. And he's the guy who kind of taught me about populism, right? Progressive populism. He insisted, he'd say, Mike, how it is, it was a bunch of farmers and ranchers sitting around a kitchen table in Texas, and he'd explain to me how populism began in this country. Right? And so what my job has been, and what I'm excited to do, because I'm a labor lobbyist now, I lobby in D.C., but when I wore a younger man's cowboy boots, I was really organizing across those ideological spectrums. I'll give you an example. So I just mentioned the mid-'90s. Yeah, the global goober, Bill Clinton, was in the White House, right? And Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House, and they wanted to expand the flawed and failed NAFTA. And in order to do it, they needed a thing called fast track. You know what I'm talking about. It's that thing where the Congress gives the administration, the executive branch, the power to just go do all these bad trade deals in the NAFTA model, and they've been using it for a lot of years. It's called Fast Track now. It's called Trade Promotion Authority, and in those days, a wide ideological, continuum, spectrum of interest was opposed to Fast Track. But Bill Clinton wanted it, and Newt Gingrich wanted it, and so, but we had to fight against them, right? Well, cut to the chase. We won that fight, right? The final vote in the House of Representatives, and whatever Congress that was, this is like 97, 98, was 243 against to 184. And I was organizing the field, right, the grassroots operation in order to frustrate the free trade lobby, to frustrate Bill Clinton and then the big corporations. And the way I did it, I'll give you an anecdote. There's a congressman in Utah. What was his name? Merrill Cook, Utah 2nd Congressional District. It's like he got elected the first time in 96. Well, in 96, you will probably remember this cat, Ross Perot, was out there, and he had a thing called the United We Stand America, and it became the Reform Party. And in those days, the grassroots, the chapters of the United We Stand America, right, they made candidates, particularly on the Republican side, sign pledges, right? And the pledges were a variety of issues, but the main thing was no more NAFTAs. No more free trade deals. And they'd get these candidates who wanted the endorsement of the local Perotista chapters, right, to sign these pledges. And so along comes Clinton and Gingrich, and they're driving for the fast track, and they want to expand NAFTA, right? Well, I was in touch with the Reform Party, the United We Stand America leadership, and they were going after this one congressman to get him to go with the corporate lobby and the fast track. And so I called up the United We Stand America chapter, right, in Salt Lake City, and I said, did you guys get a pledge, from Merrill Cook, last year when he ran and he got elected and he's in the Congress now? Did you get the pledge? I get the guy on the phone, and he's, well, let me check. Opened his files. It's the old days, paper files, but finds this dusty, he sure did. He signed a pledge. And I said, we really need that right now, right? This is in the days of, fax machines and stuff. Fax it over here right now and fax it to the Salt Lake City, Bugle Courier Times Dispatch, whatever, right? Get it out there. And sure enough, in a couple of hours, Merrill Cook had proclaimed, put it out to the press, I will not support fast track. I will not support NAFTA expansion. And it was just an example. I'm using that as an example of the kind of left-right populist organizing in coalitions that is so important and is such a big part of how RCAF operates. Within the Coalition for a Prosperous America, that, as Bill mentioned, includes agriculture and some industry and labor unions like mine, like the Teamsters, right, to fight the free trade lobby. I like to say about RCAF and the Coalition for Prosperous America, because I've been doing this for a long time. Frankly, if RCAF didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. Yeah, it's a completely major player, like the Teamsters Union, in the fight for fair trade. So my premise, the premise of my presentation, and what I came to tell you today, is that really the only way we win on fair trade, on these policies, and I'm going to be talking about them here in a second. I'm going to dive into my PowerPoint. I got a thing here. Is to stretch, and to mobilize our coalitions, stretch them. If you're sitting at a coalition table and everybody at the table is in lockstep with you on every single issue, right? And you're all completely familiar to one another, and and all that, your coalition is too small. The way we win, and the way we've been winning, and the way we're going to continue to win, right, is by stretching our coalitions, and frankly, by inviting a labor guy to the RCAF convention. And so, again, proud to be that first guy. There's some other unions that are very interested in what we do. The United Food and Commercial Workers, and the meat packing, and all the rest. These unions. We have more in common than we have differences. And I think that's really kind of a key message. So let me just kind of get into it a little bit. The supply chain. We've all been talking about supply chains. We are the Teamsters North America's supply chain union. This is us. we're 1.4 million members. I want to mention that we're also in Canada, right? But, in the UPS guy that was just here in the building, I said howdy to because I'm wearing my lapel pin, right? We're those guys, all the UPS drivers. But we're also the freight. We're the truck drivers, freight rail, our Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Train Men, right? We're the warehouses, we're at the ports, air cargo. These are all Teamsters, right? If something is coming in or out of this country, it is very likely that a Teamster is touching it at some point. We are in the supply chains. But as well, we're also in, some manufacturing. We have some other skin in the trade game. So our dairy processing workers, we're going to be talking about them in a minute. We're North America's Dairy Workers Union. Food processing. We've got some tank haul, car haul, we have a bunch of stuff. I just wanted to give you a sense of what the Teamster stake, what our footprint is, if you will, on trade policy. And that's why, the Teamsters are so engaged on trade. And I have the honor of being Jimmy Hoffa Jr.'s liaison on a couple of these advisory committees. I have a security clearance. That's right. The guy who organized the battle in Seattle, right, has a security clearance now, 20 years later, to talk to the administration about, trade policy. My portfolio includes both trade and agriculture. So I'm this is where most of my work on the Hill and with the administration, where it is. I'm going to talk for a couple seconds just about where trade and agriculture kind of overlap and where the places where I engage as a policy matter, both with the administration and with the Congress, and some of the issues where trade and agriculture are meeting. And some of these things are part and parcel of the RCAF, agenda, policy agenda. So, for example, supply management. And I'm going to be talking about this again in a little bit later slide as a kind of a case study. In the context of the USMCA, NAFTA 2.0, the dairy dispute. As I mentioned, we're, North America's Dairy Workers Union. As you may know, the first petition filed under the USMCA for dispute settlement is against Canada's tariff rate quotas. All right, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here about it, but it's the first case relates to that, and it's an assault on Canada's system of supply management. Buy America is a huge issue right now, right? The Biden administration and the Congress and the Democrats especially all talking about Buy America. In the context of infrastructure, Buy America. Well, we've got some skin in that game in the food processing, on behalf of our food processing members, relating to school lunches. I'll be talking about that in a minute, and the coalitions that we formed around Buy America and around school lunches. The CNRA there is the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act coming up after the recess, and I'm going to be working on that versus the government procurement agreement, a plurilateral agreement that is part of the WTO that we hate. And when I say we, I mean me and, CPA, the Coalition for Prosperous America, and all of you. We don't like the government procurement agreement or any really a lot of other parts of the WTO. Intellectual property, I work that's kind of the common food names. This whole thing with cheese names. It came up in our negotiations with the European Union a couple of years ago. Again, I'm aligned with the dairy industry, big dairy on this, because the Europeans have this system called geographic indications, right? So they want to protect, Fontina, Parmesan, right, and Asiago, these cheeses. These are European cheeses, and Parmesan cheese can only come from Parma, which is, I guess, some town in Italy or something, right? Right? And it's an issue. And it's an issue that I noticed, I was talking to Bill about this earlier, that's kind of come up in the beef context, right? Why not make USA beef a geographic indication and to protect the name by, intellectual property, copyright, trademark, if you will, of USA beef? I mean, it's a really good idea. I'd like to work with you guys on that. Issues relating to competition, monopsony, corporate concentration. These are issues that have some globalization, in trade policy interactions. It's again a place where trade and agriculture policy intersect. And then I just got to say, on behalf of the labor movement, because I'm representing it today, labor rights is a really big, important issue for us in everything related to trade policy and globalization. Tomorrow, my brother Greg Owens, also from CPA, is going to be talking a little bit about some. Greg, where are you? Yeah. So, and we're going to be talking a little bit about immigration. Let me give you labor's perspective on this issue, right, which is a globalization issue. There's two forces in modern capitalism, right? The two forces are capital and labor. The only problem is that capital, finance capital, investments can bounce off satellites and trillions of dollars being invested wherever they want, all over the world, bouncing off satellites, looking for the best return on the dollar, but that means the lowest environmental, the lowest labor standards, the lowest wage rates. That's what they do. They outsource, right? And capital does that. We've been watching them do it for a generation, a couple generations. Labor can't do that because of immigration, because of borders, right? Labor can't follow, right, the money, the investment dollars, and go and enjoy the same freedom of movement around the globe because of this issue, right? And it's something that Greg's going to be talking about tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that. But I will say that labor rights, right, raising labor standards so that American jobs and my members are more competitive in the world economy is a bottom line issue for the labor movement, always, always. We're interested in this is my friend Dennis Olson over, Dennis, over at UFCW, said, one of the ways that we in the labor movement should talk to farmers and ranchers is, it's very simple, right? Our guys think about their hourly wage, right? How much is the hourly wage? You guys think in terms of your annual, net, right? The profits, right? If you thought about that annual, and this relates to all farmers and family farmers in particular, in terms of so how much am I making per hour, right? Do the math, right? Or we thought more generally about what our net is than the way kind of you all think about it. It would just be a way of, family farmers and food processing workers talking at least in the same terms, because we have the same bottom line interest that, of the middle class. We want to make a living, right? We want to have a good livelihood, and we want to work together. So much for that. Okay, environment, yeah, carbon, it's everything, we always have to talk about it now. It's a priority for this administration. It's probably a negotiating objective under Trade Promotion Authority. But the debates around production models, grazing, things, the precautionary principle. Here's the part where I tell you a joke. Okay, you're gonna like this one. So a couple of cows, this is a few years ago. They're in England, and they're grazing in their field, right? And this is back during, first cow says, "I say, this is terrible news. We're all doomed." The second cow says, "What on earth are you talking about?" The first cow says, "Haven't you heard? Bovine spongiform encephalopathy, mad cow disease. We're all doomed." And the second cow says, "Oh, I feel awfully sorry for you, old chap, but I've nothing to worry about. You see, I'm a penguin." Okay. Look, the British people love penguin jokes, okay? Anything with a penguin is funny for them. Mad cow, okay. China is also a big issue. First case study, I'm going to tell you a little bit. I've been working on this one a lot. And I just want to, first of all, confess, the Teamsters supported the USMCA, NAFTA 2.0. Do you know why? The big issue for us? Yeah, it was the trucks, Mexican trucks issue. Perennial issue for us. I got that fixed, right? In USMCA, I worked really hard for a couple of years, right, to get a fix to the open trucks on the southern border, Mexican carriers, unsafe. And I did that, as long as I'm talking about coalitions, I did that in coalition with the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association out of Kansas City, our brothers in Owida. They're not in the union, but they drive trucks, as well as the advocates for highway safety, because really it was a highway safety issue. The Sierra Club weighed in because of truck affluence waiting in line at the borders, public citizen waiting. So I worked on a coalition and, I got it fixed. And then there was really good labor rights provisions that the Democrats in particular got inserted into the USMCA, an improvement over the NAFTA. And the Teamsters, for the first time ever, on any deal, ever supported a trade deal, and it was the NAFTA 2.0. We hated NAFTA. Now, I know RCAF did not, because you didn't get everything that you wanted, but we're going to keep fighting together so that the NAFTA model is in the dustbin of history, and the improvements that we demand as fair trade coalitions, are achieved. So anyway, there was a compromise in NAFTA 2.0 between the supply management system of the Canadians, which they want to defend, and the, offensive interests of big dairy, who are our employers. Dairy Farmers of America, a lot of the co-ops, these are our employers. 40,000 Teamsters, also in Canada, but in North America. And so there was a compromise that came out of it. And so the first case filed under USMCA, and the first enforcement action wasn't labor rights like we were kind of hoping. No. It was this old issue around dairy, right? Going after Canada's supply management system. There's an overproduction of dairy. This is the other use of cows that you're probably familiar with. Oversupply of dairy, in the U.S., and we've been trying to dump dairy products, particularly the milk protein concentrates, into the Canadian market for a really long time. Our analysis at the Teamsters was that if the U.S. prevails on this petition against Canadian supply management, there would be no additional U.S. jobs created for us Teamsters, but in Canada, where we have some local unions that are in dairy processing, they would lose jobs. And so we took a position in opposition to the Trump petition against which the Biden administration has inherited against the Canadian TRQ, tariff rate quota allocations last summer. It's weedy, but we took that position. And I put together an ad hoc coalition, a binational coalition, National Family Farm Coalition, National Farmers Union, the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, if you ever heard of those guys, UFCW, another union, Family Farm Defenders, Farm Aid. So I put together, because this is what I like to do. It's like my, it's my MO, is putting together coalitions. So I put together a big coalition. We did some press. We lobbied the administration. We lobbied the USTR. We got our voices heard up on Capitol Hill as well. And, to be seen. The jury's still out. There's a panel on there. But my point is that, this first consultation, this is what's going on. My job here was to come up and tell you about some stuff that's going on in trade policy. That's what's happening under USMCA enforcement. But I will also say that, we're going to be working on the Farm Bill, right? And that's coming up after the midterm elections. The Farm Bill is up again in 23. Right, so after the midterms, right? And so some of the conversations that we're already having in coalition and around some of these policy options, like supply management, is going to be part of the conversation in the context of the Farm Bill, right? Conversations that I'm going to be having with you, right, about these things, all right? And I wanted to put together a coalition where we could at least know that we're all talking, on the same, from the same hymn book, singing the song of the hymns of fair trade and not free trade. So I'm giving that as an example, right? Looking at kind of the long game, right? Oh, look, I wrote cool. Yeah, country of origin labeling, Teamsters Foursquare. I talked to President Hoffa, genuinely my boss, all the time. He's like, yes, We are absolutely foursquare behind country of origin labeling with the other fair trade constituencies and coalitions. Yeah, right? Throughout the agriculture community, throughout family farms and ranchers, right? Country of origin labeling is something we will always fight for, and the Teamsters will always be right there with you. Next, case studies. Here we go, Buy American. Okay, so actually, if I go back, what happened? Right. Yeah, Farm Bill 23. Okay, now we're moving forward again. This is good. All right. School lunches. Another coalition, I'll be quick about this. Another coalition, our co-op employers, like in peaches, canned peaches, right? We have a cannery council in California. Think Steinbeck, right? Cannery Row, right? Those are Teamsters, right? Many of them women of color, right? In like Salinas and the Central Valley of California, right? Well, the school districts are importing really gross canned peaches. I got a whole PowerPoint on this from China. They're coming over in great big, containers, disgusting, gross canned peaches, and that's jobs for our folks, our cannery council workers, right? So there's an exception, right, to the mandate, right? School lunches are supposed to be through the United States Department of Agriculture. Richard B. Rogers School Lunch Act or something like this. So there's this pedigree of Buy America in school lunches, as there should be. Yeah, but there's some exceptions. And one of the exceptions, you'll like this, one of the exceptions is called the significant cost differential, right? So if you can prove, right, that the Chinese peaches cost less than the wholesome American-grown and Teamster canned peaches, then you, school district, you can go get the Chinese peaches. That puts our guys out of work, and the peach cooperatives are not happy about that. And by the way, it's not just peaches, it's also orange juice, the applesauce, a whole bunch of stuff, for all I know, the beef, right? That should be, right, the supply chain, right, the inputs to our school lunches, K through 12 cafeterias, coast to coast. That's an issue I'm working on right now. And as you probably know, Biden put out an executive order on Buy America earlier this year. The new Buy America director in the OMB in the White House, a personal friend of mine. She came out of the Labor Department, Celeste Drake, a great American running the Buy American program for the Biden administration. And we are working because, frankly, everything in D.C. now is a two-pronged strategy, at least for us in the labor movement. Prong one, the administration. Joe Biden, yeah, we closed the exception on the school lunch program, and at the same time we're talking to the committees of jurisdiction in the Congress because the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act, is coming up. Everything is two-pronged now. You're working the executive, you're working the legislative, two prongs, and that's what we're doing, as well as at the sub-federal level, talking to the school districts, talking to the states, right, and trying to close that loophole that, as a Teamster, I get to say this, you could drive a truck through, right, and get Buy America to be the way it works from now on in the school lunch program. Yeah, Farm Bill, mentioned that. Oh man, look at all those stupid acronyms. Oh boy. I know, I'll tell you about the time I organized the Big Sky Fair Trade Campaign. Up above Butte, Montana, there's a old mine pit, the Berkeley Mine Pit. I don't know if you haven't been up to Butte before, but Max Baucus was the senator from Montana for a while. He's a bad free trader, really bad. He was up for re-election. This is sometime in the late 90s, right? And we got Max Baucus. He was a thorn in the ass of progress on trade. I mean, there's just no polite way to say it. And we needed to put some grassroots pressure on him, right? So I go out to Billings, right, in Montana, and I start to organize a coalition which I called the Big Sky Fair Trade Campaign. And we launched this coalition to put pressure on Max Baucus at that mine pit. On the anniversary, actually, of the day that, I don't know, something like 83 miners, 1917, something like that, on some anniversary, and, we got them up there at the Sierra Club, and Baucus sends somebody, and the other folks, and the family farmers, and the labor folks, and me, right? And we got up there, and then we had a moment of silence, remembering the miners who died up there at the Berkeley mine pit up above Butte, Montana. We launched the Big Sky Fair Trade Campaign. My point here is the coalitions that we build, that you build, that we're in together already, and that we can continue to build, that's how we win. And all these right here are coalitions that, I work in. Where's the whole list here? There's the UFCW and the AFL-CIO, the National Family Farm Coalition. I mentioned these folks earlier, National Farmers Union, which, by the way, includes some very, very good state affiliates, right? I mean, I'm thinking about Wisconsin, for example, on the dairy stuff. Ohio Farmers Union, our good friend Joe Logan, who's on the board at the Coalition for Prosperous America. NCFC, that's the farmer cooperatives, the cooperatives. A lot of our best employers are co-ops. We like co-ops. Food and Water Watch, there's an environmental group. RCAF, yeah, we love those guys. Yeah. We're in some coalitions, the Citizens Trade Campaign, Coalition for Prosperous America. GUFs, those are global union federations. So we actually have solidarity with our opposite numbers in some of these other countries. So it's kind of like global coalitions, international solidarity. The Cynical Response Action Project. Okay, that doesn't actually exist yet, but I'm thinking of putting that one together, Cynical Response Action Project, and you're all invited. United We Stand America, the Tea Party Patriots that I mentioned before. These are coalitions that, span not just constituencies, but also ideologies, and that's the point that I was making before. So sorry about the coalition vehicles, but I'm going to emphasize the word vehicle for a second. A couple of minutes ago when Bill was introducing Carson, he called RCAF a vehicle. I don't know if you caught that. I did. I was like, exactly. This is the point that I want to make. This is the segue. RCAF is a vehicle, right, that is crucial to, all right, let's put me up here now. Okay. I'm going to show you how I organize. This is my organizing structure. When I organize stuff, this is how I do it. I don't know how much time I have left, so I'm going to do it kind of quickly. This is called the effective action model, and I'm going to focus in on the vehicular way that we do this. The context for this meeting, this convention, right, and all the work that you guys got to do, and when you go back home, right, that is, there's a reduction. Well, I was reading something Bill wrote earlier this year about beef cattle operations. 38,500 beef producers in the Northwest, just the Northwest, in 94 after the NAFTA. That's down to under 29,000, 28,000 and change, right, in 2017, a 25% reduction in beef production operations, over the generation, that hasn't spawned, RCAF, right? 240,000 fewer head of cattle because of globalization. And this is the context, right? And we share some beliefs and some values about, workers and farmers and the middle class and being able to, and fair trade principles. We share those principles. When I do organizing with organizers and I put volunteers together in a room, I do this on a big piece of butcher paper or a PowerPoint. But we share these beliefs and values, and we have some goals, right? So what are the goals of RCAF? What are the goals that we can work on together? The goals of CPA, for example, fix the fed cattle marketing system? I don't know. Rebalance trade with Canada and Mexico? Yeah. Farmers and ranchers and workers making a good living? We share these goals. And what I do is I try to organize the conditions and the determiners of who are the people that we need to get to, who are the policymakers, right? I was talking earlier about the executive branch and the legislative branch, and who do we need to get to, right? We identify them. We do this on butcher paper. We do a power analysis. It's a thing. And then we develop some, strategies. Some of those are legislative strategies. Some of them are media strategies. Some of them are sub-federal strategies at the state and local level. We develop strategies, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, the differences between strategies and tactics. Like press rallies or, the battle in Seattle, we had a tactic called direct action. They got a whole bunch of us thrown in the hooskow. But there it was, the tactics, right? And I don't want to get too much in because I don't have time to really do this, right? But here's the point, the vehicles, all right? RCAF and the coalitions that I've been talking about all through my presentation are vehicles. Vehicles to achieve the goals, to implement the tactics and strategies to achieve those goals that reflect our values, our shared values to achieve our goals, right? I mean, really, frankly, inviting me, right, a labor guy, to an RCAF convention is frankly vehicular. It's vehicular. This is a vehicle, right? And that's what I've been really wanting to focus on, is thinking about RCAF and the coalitions that we have as vehicles to achieve those goals, right? So then you go down and there's some objectives. We think about, USA beef, right? What a good objective in the context of that intellectual property that I was talking about earlier. What a good objective, right? Or defeat the NCBA petition. Bill, I read your filing the other day. Bill's pretty prolific. He writes a lot of really good stuff for RCAF, on RCAF letterhead. Defeating that is an objective, right? It's going to help us advance to our goals, and it's part of our larger strategy, isn't it, right? Okay. And then we talk about steps and tasks, right? The RCAF letter, if you haven't read it, from 19 April of this year, specifically asks Vilsack and Ty, Catherine Ty is the new USTR. Oh, I'm going to say it's that. I was on the phone, by the way, with USTR day before yesterday. I said, yeah. I was talking to one of the ag folks. I said, yeah, I'm going to go talk to RCAF this week. Oh, yeah. Powerful. I'm going to go there. And they pointed out, they said, well, not only are you the first labor guy to go talk to RCAF, but, oh, by the way, Catherine Ty is the first USTR to ever talk to RCAF. And I guess you guys set that up earlier this year. So it's like, yeah, a couple of firsts. Catherine Ty is actually pretty good. I like her a lot. I was pretty okay with Bob Lighthizer, too. He fixed the truck thing. But our new USTR is the first one to have the conversation with you, at the level that you wanted, I do believe. All right. But in that letter, right, to Vilsack and Ty, Bill says, take steps to assist cattle farmers by giving them the ability to compete in their own domestic market. Take those steps. I'm quoting RCAF letter to Vilsack and to Ty, and it is exactly right. What are the steps? And the focus is strategic. I mean, it's good organizing focus. What are those steps? You guys understand what they are, right? And it's why I said a few minutes ago, if RCAF didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. It's exactly for that purpose, right? All right. So writing those comments was a good step. Finally, the resources, right? That's you. It's a volunteer effort. It's your good grassroots efforts. It's the calls you make. That's part of the resources. And, money, right? Then we having coalitions that are underwritten. Because, we're going up against some very big fat cats in industry and the free trade lobby and the transnational corporate elites. They have deep, deep pockets. And so I'm not going to ignore that resource question. Because then when we get to do it, then we start to do this. That's right. Do we have the resources, right, to allow us, this is the analysis, to make the steps, to do get the tasks done? Do we? And if we do, and then we can achieve those steps, this is the way organizing the effective action model in fact works, then we probably can achieve our objectives. We should. If we can't, then we got to go back and analyze the resources and the steps and the tasks. Did we do it right? This is the great thing about organizing on the effective action model, is that it allows you to both go in and come out, as I'm doing now, and reevaluate whether or not your organizing model, your organizing assumptions, were correct. And then you're making your objectives, and they are helping you achieve, empower your vehicles, achieve the ultimate goals. That, in a very, very brief way, is the way that I look at the organizing around trade, and the ways that I do the coalition work that I have done for a few decades now. And it concludes my remarks. But I just want to say, as I was writing this PowerPoint, I came up with this. Do you like it? Because we've just been doing all this infrastructure stuff in Washington, D.C. Well, it got done, right? Some big bill, right? Well, after infrastructure, agriculture. Am I right? All right, thank you.